Let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Maddox Digital Plus Customer Success Summit. You are currently watching Partnering with Marketing to create your outbound digital CS strategy. I'm excited to introduce our speakers, and as I introduce them, I'm going to have them answer our icebreaker question. What is your biggest digital addiction? So first off, please welcome Elaine Hom, Director of Customer Marketing at Arcoro. Elaine, what is your biggest digital addiction?
I am old school and I am still a Reddit obsessee. I've been in some of the same subreddits for a very long time, generally around cats and capybaras.
Nice. Reddit veteran. Love to hear that. Also,
Yes.
please welcome Jeff Kushmark, CEO and founder at Infinite Renewals. Jeff, your biggest digital addiction.
Well, there's a lot of them. I'm not gonna lie here. But I'm a big Reddit person as well. Definitely 10:15 at night in bed with the Reddit up. But I go super deep into certain reality TV shows that I like, and then I'll then troll around some jam band Reddits as well too and subreddits. So yeah, that's me. There you go.
Awesome. Well, welcome to you both. I'll stop sharing my screen. Jeff, you can share and we can kick off this session.
All right. So find me at Good Help 362 on Reddit, and I will be happy to. Okay, I am presenting now, so you should be able to see my screen in 1 second here. Maybe not. Right? Can you see it?
I
No.
believe it's loading.
Okay.
Uh,
Apologies.
Not
Anything?
yet. Do you might need to unshare and try again?
Okay, we'll try that. Apologies, everyone. We just literally tried this. So I'm going to share this first. Yeah, I see what's going on here. Okay, right. All right, so you should see that. And now I'm going to hit presentation, and we should be good to go.
Yep.
Full screen.
Perfect. Thank you.
First time in technology. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. We're just going to and this is going to be action packed with a lot of data. I probably have gotten a whole bunch of theory and why you should be doing it. I wanted to get together with Elaine today. Elaine and I, okay, quick thing about me. There you go. Was an operator for a really long time for some companies that had some great exits. And I started this company called Infinite Renewals, and that's what we do. We help companies with their revenue. And Elaine and I have worked twice together on some big projects. One was at Virgin Pulse, and another was a company called Arcuro. So she's going to be the star of this show. So I'm going to turn it over to her to introduce herself.
Yep. I thanks, Jeff. I've known Jeff for many years, and we have partnered together on a lot of digital strategies, particularly in the B2B SaaS world and B2B2C. So excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, I actually love the one we did when we were at Virgin Pulse together was huge because it's like two examples we're working off of today, right? One was Virgin Pulse, which sold to a few really large employee-based companies, and then you had to then treat it like a B2C after that. And so we had to use B2C strategies for that. And then there's the opposite of it where we sell to a ton of companies. And then we have to treat it like a B2B and then figure out sort of a method from there. So awesome. So let's dive into it a little bit. We're going to talk about is Elaine's current company, which is called Arcuro, which is Elaine, you can explain it since I always do a bad job of that. So
Sure. Arcoro is a construction HR focused solution that is a great software platform for anyone that's in the construction industry.
awesome. And so we got brought in because there was some churn factors to be looking at. And interesting, just one note on that. The original focus was on sort of the more enterprise product because there had been some dollars churning there. But when we actually started getting into the data, we actually found that the majority of the churn or the stuff that was really concerning was on the SMB side. There was 33% of the revenue is in the SMB tier. And Arcuro is not a small company. They have lots and lots of clients. So this percentage really started eating into the bottom line, where I believe, I might have it on a second slide, that 85% of the churn came from this tier that had 33% of the revenue. I think that's all the math that we're doing today, by the way. So, and then there was lots of things, right? So, Akura was a combination of, where one company goes out and kind of buys some competing products and, or in this case, not as competing, but just trying to make like sort of the one big construction play, right? So there was a time tracking software, there's HR, there's X, and there's Y. So when we were going in there, there had been some teams that had been kind of moved around, and that's kind of where we saw that there was some things that were kind of not happening for this segment. One of them was they were just not being messaged after they went live. They had a very kind of quick and easy onboarding process. And then 11 months would go by and they would not hear from Arcuro. And, unless there was a support issue, and there was one play in the in the customer success platform. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Sorry. There was one play and it was, will you renew? Right? Elaine, I believe that was what we had found in there.
That is correct. Yes.
Yep. And so we were in this sort of like, okay, we definitely need a low touch digital engagement for SMBs. But it's not enough to mitigate the churn. Like, coming from a CS background, it's like, here we go, let's go with the digital thing. What does that look like, right? And that was just not enough when we're looking at this sort of problem. So when we got into it, we went super deep into the numbers, and we just found that the tiering, that was being put onto the individual, what were at that time being called CERs, which were called the customer engagement reps, they were phone only. They were usually dealing with, sort of more support types of questions. There were 7,000 customers that were in there, and they were just not being touched on anything on a proactive basis, or the only time we heard from them when there was a support issue, I would say. And then this sort of will you renew issue right there. So when we started looking at the numbers, it wasn't let's just hire a bunch of people, or let's do X, or let's go Y. Elaine, I didn't know if you had anything else on this. I didn't know. Sorry, getting queuing up there, but okay.
No,
Yeah.
you're totally right. Yeah.
Yep. So what happened was, we kind of got together, and we had strategies for the higher tiers and what that looked like, and the sort of some realignment around account management and customer success folks and everything. Kind of got that squared up and straightened away. And then we looked at, okay, what do we do about this sort of large sort of percentage of customers that need some love, essentially, right? And that's when we brought Elaine in, right? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I think we have this sort of in a slide or two, but this wasn't for me what I felt like is a classic sort of CS digital thing, right? There was community, there was a lot of help articles out there and everything. It was a little scattered, but we felt the content was out there. But I felt that if we approached this in a way that Elaine and I had done it on a previous engagement, which we'll get into, which was a little bit more behavior. It was a little bit more taking them through the whole funnel and life cycle, and not just focusing on things like usage, right? So we started putting this plan together. We needed to make sure that we had the right software in place and things like that. In that we had sort of all the right data points to be able to trigger off a lot of the stuff in the software. So once we got to that point, which, it does take a little while, we had a great RevOps partner that really helped us out a lot as well too. Elaine sort of really forced us to use market. I'm just kidding, but like was very, as we love, very strongly supportive of a platform that was a little bit more marketing focused and a little less CS focused to be able to get this messaging out. We just found that the classic CSP templates that were available there weren't going to do the job for the consumer that we felt we were kind of going after, right? Hopefully I didn't mention any names, but that's sort of what we came down through the analysis, right? So.
Right.
Awesome.
I think that most CSPs, the templates that come with them assume a level of trust that already exists between the company and the customer. And often you have to build that from the ground up.
Yeah. So we're now going to go into like super tactical, how this went down and all the things in the machinery behind the scenes that Elaine went into it. I just kind of want to cover off like a few things. Actually, I will turn this over to you, Elaine, because we were chatting about this both parts, but this is that part where I realized this isn't in CS sweet spot right here. This is like a consumer marketing campaign.
Right, absolutely. So, one of the things about marketing is it's much more than making things pretty or creating PowerPoints for people. One of the skill sets that marketing will have is the ability to speak to your customers in a one-to-many format. So you're not talking about necessarily individualized from the CSM to the customer. It is from the brand. And when you start to build that trust and that sentiment, you can start to actually change your customers' behavior. With marketing, you also have the understanding of things like behavioral economics, which is the science of knowing that humans don't behave rationally. If they behave rationally, nobody would smoke, everybody would eat healthy. But we don't. We
Right.
behave in the way that feels good for us at that moment.
Yeah.
And using the science of behavior change are things that people in marketing are used to doing. So, for example, last year, McDonald's changed their menus. They took the price and the name of the item and put it under the image of the item instead of next to it. And just by that change, because it created a want, then the price, they saw a 9.5% increase in sales.
Oh my God. Wow.
That's a lot of money for
A lot of Big
McDonald's,
Macs. Yeah,
right? It's a lot of Big Macs, a lot of big, pretty Big Macs, because if you see the Big Mac first and then the price afterwards, you want it no matter what the price is. But if you see the price first, you're like, eh. So it's
And
that
from
sort
the
of like,
and from the but from the CS background, right? That's not how we think. We're like, oh, let's make sure we get their outcomes, right? Let's make sure that let's use our triangle tier. They pay us this much, they get this service. They pay us this much, they get this, and this is the bottom one. So we're going to email them and then maybe send a loom every once in a while. Like that's a lot of the background that I'm sort of used to dealing with in that stuff. So
exactly. And I think a lot of CS communication is based in, but why wouldn't they want this? This will help them.
right.
And it's simply because we know that people don't behave rationally. And so things need to be reframed for them. And with the collaboration between the two, it's going to be a lot easier to align your goals with marketing. And you'll see a great amount of overlap in marketing campaigns with CS goals if you have those conversations. And that
Absolutely.
leads to segmentation.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, we just
we
did.
can
Yeah.
talk a little bit
Sorry,
more
we
about
went
that
through it.
after.
Yeah. Also, like we don't A/B test and all that stuff. CS, like we do, we try, but like sorry, I see the chat popping up there, but like I'm gonna move over to the next one and get into segments, tiers. Oh, I think we had a question, didn't we?
Did we?
As in, we were gonna ask, how do you segment today?
Yes. Yes, I'd love to know, and feel free to drop it into the chat. And if you don't segment, that's okay too. Say we don't segment. I'd love to know how your company is currently segmenting your customers today.
Yeah, classic AAR segmentation, which
Classic.
how I do
Yep.
it, right? Some
Right.
starting off, you can't go wrong with that type of a thing. So.
Right. What are they spending? How big is their contract? What you'll find is how a way to really reach your customers is to think about them by segmenting by behavior.
Awesome. All right.
So this is where we get into some of the more fancy psychographic segmentation. When you think about demographics, that is a very analog way to look at customers. Really, it is important, absolutely, but it's designed for that kind of B2C, how to understand someone's buying power, not their behavior, not understanding what their motivations are. It's not a good predictor of whether or not they will use your platform and continue to engage. So, and this is because not all the demographics is women. Not all women think the same. Not all people who live in the state of Iowa think the same. Not all people who are Hispanic think the same. And these are the things that we use to segment when you do demographics. If we look at psychographics instead, you're looking more at what the person's behavior, motivations, and personal priorities are. And that is how you can begin to assess someone's habits. What are they actually going to constantly engage with? It's not consumption, which is just a one-time purchase and that's it. And it's fine if you haven't segmented any of this yet, because using marketing's many to one, all in one journey will help you figure out what your segments are by using those concepts of behavioral economics, like social proof, framing, priming them for the next touch.
Got it. Awesome.
So this is an example of a journey that we created. And some info has been redacted, right? And this is where everyone wants to go. This is where everyone thinks that they will end up.
I always think it's going to wind up like this, and we wind up with like 5 emails.
Right. And that's once again, just simply something that isn't in a CS skill set. But this is how marketing thinks about everything. Everything is a journey for marketing, from drip campaigns to nurture campaigns. And if with these two, streams of thought together, you can make it happen. And this is actually what we executed in less than a week, because of the very targeted conversations that we had with product to identify what are the stickiest features, what are the most useful features. I don't know why it says it 3 times there, but that's to really hammer it home, that we are thinking about sticky features. We want to know what are the useful features that need to be highlighted, and how can each touch deliver value to the customer in a different way. The way that you put a headline together, the way that you put a subject line together, it will appeal to different types of your customers. And depending on how they react, you can start to bucket your customers under, they're very excited about incentive. This one's very excited about technical information. This one's very excited about tactical information. So this is how you can use that kind of all-in-one journey to create those segments.
Awesome.
And of course, you want to think about email best practices, right? Obviously, like Jeff said, we had lots of great resources. They're just scattered. Put a lot of them in one place so that they want to save this email and continue to go back to it. Make a very clear call to action that doesn't just say, book time with me today. Make sure that it goes somewhere that is useful for you and that has the fewest click barriers possible. Use bullets to break up the text. It may seem very obvious, but we do see a lot of stream of consciousness marketing. And let's say someone responds to this, right? Let's say they read this, but they don't click until they get the 5th email. Now I know that about them. Now I know that I have to prime them and really give them several emails before they trust my content enough to click on it. But if someone clicks right away, that's a different persona. They're eager. They want to know. So you can easily use your marketing automation program to bucket these people into different buckets.
Got it. All right.
So one of the things that is always the difficult in any project campaign is, what is success, right? How do we know it worked? Sure, we can look at churn. That will take you 12 months to know if that worked. But you can also look at the email, and standard email KPIs that a marketing team is used to looking at will tell you a lot about your customer. This is some of the analysis that we did, where we looked at how long did they spend reading it. We realized they read this first email very intensively. They didn't skim it, they read it, which is one of the features that you can get from a marketing automation software. It's not something that's commonly in a CSP. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. I don't think
I'm not used to seeing to this level. It's usually opens for me, but I mean,
right.
Somebody else can chime in if they get, platforms are different, but yeah.
Right. Right. And, now I know that with this kind of welcome content, this is where we want to really hit them hard, because we got a 31% open rate and a 6% click-through rate, or click rate, with 18% click-through. Like, that's huge. In the email world, that is really big. You might
Yeah,
also
I'm used to like a 0.5 or 5% or something like that, right? So
Right. So seeing that kind of interest, we knew that the appetite was there.
Okay. All right.
It's always important to synthesize your findings. I did this for all 90 days of the journey and was able to put together recommendations on next steps, which of course included me doing more work, but that's the beauty of this, is being able to pivot based on your takeaways and pivot quickly is really important. So having that person on the marketing team that's used to turning around journey changes and email changes very quickly is a key part of achieving success.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes we do have these people in CS and they're known as like customer marketing, whatever, and they've got the dotted line. And I know when we were at Virgin, there was sort of this group, but we're all making sure that we were in conjunction with the general design principles for the company and things like that as well too. Oh, I just saw a question pop up, so we're trying to answer these lives while we're in context here. But okay,
I was just cheering on
yeah,
someone who's moving to
okay.
behavior. That's great.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so yeah, exactly. And then we start talking about the crawl, walk, run phrase. So
Yes. So crawl, walk, run is huge here. Crawling means just getting maybe 3 or 4 emails to go first. Launch with 30 days. Then you have 30 more days to work on it before you get to the 31st day. And then you can add another 30 days. And at some point, you'll get to 90. You can start to look at engagement, see what product features are still being ignored, and create more journeys based on the personas that you're developing based on this journey and how it's performing. You can't expect that it's all going to do well either. I expect failure. I expect there's going to be an email that gets 0 across the boards, but that's all really important data because every 0 means okay, no one clicked on that. I know that that is not something that worked, and we will understand why because I analyzed this. With this one size fits all, as you're trying to gather these segments and bucket them appropriately, it's just inevitable that that's going to happen. And it's also dependent on your industry. You will see a big change across whether you're construction or healthcare or a subscription streaming service, all of which I worked for, all of which had very, very different market standards. And go with the basic email tenets, which is if there's low opens, adjust the subject lines. If there's low clicks, think about the value of the content and look at your call to action.
yeah, absolutely. Again, don't always think about this way. At least I don't always from the CS perspective as well too. Yeah, there we go here. So we
Have
did
a question?
actually try and leave it open for questions. There's a lot that we get into. The one thing I wanted to pop out when we started talking about the 30, 60, 90, I've been involved with a lot of these campaigns or, when we try and get these things off the ground and people won't go and they won't launch these things until they've written out the full batch of content, which will drive me absolutely crazy because writing good content and the images and getting them into the marketing software and all that, that takes a long time. But then Elaine, it's like, how many times have we seen it? You might have a way of doing them that will give you your low opens or your low click-throughs, and you'll have wound up creating 90 days worth of bad content, right? Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome.
We do have a question.
We do know. I think you must have just answered every question that they could possibly have wanted.
Jennifer asked.
Oh, I don't see those. Oh, okay. Am I seeing?
She asked, can you share what kind of behavioral metrics to look for? I mentioned likelihood to open the email and any others. Yes, absolutely. So you can also look at type of content that they're interested in. People consume information in different ways. Like I said earlier, my digital addiction is Reddit. I love to read text. If I have an AI voice reading text to me over a video, as every TikTok video is, I can't handle that. But I know plenty of people that prefer to consume content in that way. So one of the things you can do is experiment with the types of content that you put in and see not only whether or not they open it, but you can see whether they click on that content, how long they engage with that content, and if they forwarded that to anybody else. How many people unsubscribed from the first email on, and think about doing an analysis on the likelihood to unsubscribe. There are all sorts of email metrics and behavior within the email and your content that they can track. You can track.
I want to add another thing in there that really triggered something off to me is that like we're talking about email a lot, but there are other ways, and you have to know what your users are. I mean, luckily these construction people definitely use their email a lot. I've worked with a lot of different companies, and you see. I had one company that they provide software for routing for truckers, and those people, the only way they could get in touch with them was on WhatsApp, ironically, and they found that if they got them at 6 o'clock, which is when they were basically starting their shift and they were all kind of assembling in the sort of place, that was the best place to do it. And then if some other people that in-app messaging works better. And I'm just curious, Elaine, and this is totally unscripted, but like, how do which way to go and which delivery mechanism to use for that?
Yeah, I think it has to be, what is your intent with the message? If you're trying to pass on vital information, that is something that's perfect for an in-app. That is something that you want to pop up the second someone logs in. If you're promoting something that may be a value or is an upsell, that can be icky in a text message or in an in-app. And that's something that's probably better served in an email where you can package it and frame it, which is one of those things that we talked about, the concepts of behavioral economics. That's sort of like if going back to Big Macs, let's say I have a Big Mac and I say, this is, 99% fat free. Is that, which is untrue, is that more of a compelling message than 1% fat?
Yeah. We have another question. I can read it off. Have you created case studies around your campaigns? If so, have you found it helpful in getting further support from leadership?
Absolutely. I think, and Jeff, you can speak to this because you
Yeah.
certainly worked a lot with the leaders.
Yeah. Well, I know that this particular one, we did get there was a lot of eyes on this one. It was a big issue, and we kind of said, this is how we're going to tackle it. Had to go through a bunch of different rounds of approvals and everything like that. And it just started really resonating, from the top level. So I can tell you that so Elaine's now working very tightly with the I think it's SVP of customer success now, where they're working on that, and they're realizing like this is an effective way of working with this customer base, and this is how we need to now think about the other demographics and making sure that our other customers are being contacted as well too, and then we have to figure out those cadences. There I know that they had particular customers that they signed 3-year contracts up front. And so then we have to figure out like what's the appropriate cadence for doing that as well too. So
Right. And I think with getting leadership on board, one of the most compelling arguments for this is that if you understand the persona breakdown of your customers and how to message them, that can then trickle up to you understanding your prospects and bringing in new logos, as well as being able to appropriately cross-sell and upsell those customers.
yeah, absolutely. All right. I don't know if we have more, so I think we might be all set if we've answered all our questions.
Yes, those were all the questions. So thank you again, Jeff and Elaine. That is the end of our session. The recording of the session will be available early next week in our resource hub, and all summit attendees will be notified when the resource hub is live. So thank you again, Jeff and Elaine, for joining us today, and thank you to everyone else for attending. Have a great rest of
Awesome.
your day.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Well,
Oh, and now we get all the stuff. Okay, great. There. I love it.
Bye.
Good job, Elaine. All right. Talk to you later.